Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy BurstCG back here, and we are back for a Marvel's Avengers video. Yes, I know I haven't posted in a while, but hopefully this is going to make up for that. It's all worth it, in my opinion. So, as of last night, two developers, Dan and Alex, who are both in the Marvel's Avengers Discord, decided to do a little voice chat call with everybody that was wanting to join in, and we had a very nice discussion regarding upcoming gear. Of course, they're not going to flat out tell you what the changes are. There are some surprises, I guess, in there, like we're going to be getting blog updates probably the second week of November, according to Alex, and he's also working with Andy to get more blogs out regarding what he's doing in his role currently for gear. Also, just overall, the conversation, being able to talk to devs, give feedback, and also hear what they have to say in terms of what type of changes they want to see and what's not working with them. You know, that type of stuff. Definitely interesting conversation. Definitely should tune in. This is only 2 hours of it. There was probably another hour, 45 minutes or so that I don't have, unfortunately, just because of recording issues. But definitely, you still should take and listen to it if you're interested in overall gear reworks and just the conversation around that. But yeah, other people might have other footage, so definitely check around for that. But also, you may want to turn your volume all the way up after I stop talking, just because the clip is kind of low. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy. Peace.
Of that because it truly is. Having more options, more fun options, healthier options is absolutely the best way to play these types of games. I don't want to go in and one shot Abomination or any of these other bosses. I want to have long drawn out fights that feel heroic and fun and just I want to have that experience.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I want to have all those. I want to have all those options, and it's like, and here's also the other flip side of like when we fixed nerf things or whatever. We also find things that aren't performing because there are some situations, and coming up in the next update, there's going to be just a cavalcade of updates, kind of showcasing this. That when we find a problem and we're like bring it in line, we also find other downstream effects of what that problem had. Certain numbers being displayed aren't the numbers being used for calculation. Some perks aren't being procced on the proper attacks. Some things are not working as intended visually or whatnot. So, like, for example, just kind of a teaser on all that kind of stuff, there's a perk that boosts the damage of Iron Man's repulsors. It doesn't work the way it says it does on the perk. Like, that number isn't being calculated properly. I fixed that. So, in unplugging all of these things, you find other things that are actually going to even some of these things out. So, battery damage, like you said, hey, that's an issue. I'm not going to touch battery damage next patch because so much else is going to happen. And then I'm going to revisit battery damage once we get all the numbers from that, because it could be in fixing things, in adding new things, battery damage is kind of, evened out. That stops becoming the thing you actually look for, or that stops becoming the primary thing that actually happens because of enemies, like our enemy design team and all that. And now I'm saying that as an assumption, as like a hypothetical. I don't agree with that. Battery damage will, in my gut, I feel the battery damage will have to get addressed to some extent, whatever. I'm just saying, I have been wrong. It could be in the next patch that everybody's like, yeah, no, battery damage is just fine. I like using this other thing, whatever.
I
And we
think
just
that's
see a
the
majority of,
biggest.
yeah,
Oh,
right there.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
that's like the biggest crime of the current system is that it has such a great, diverse combat system. Like you can do juggles, you can do various combo routes, you can work with a friend and pop somebody up and then finish them off with a heroic of a different ability. All kinds of different stuff that plays together, and so much of it is simplified to damage or damage
Yeah.
buff that it's
Uh,
just such a shame.
uh, it's not only just simplified to damage buff, but like a lot of the numbers are definitely weighted more on the aggressive end more than the defensive end. Like, oh yay, everybody knows that Thor has an increased multiplier for valor to his heroic stat. Great. Why doesn't Hulk have that? It's a question I brought up. It's something I would like to address in the future. Some of these numbers were chosen based on older design or older intent, and through shifting responsibility and like changing initiatives, those things haven't really come back up. But we're kind of in a situation pushing forward where that intent needs to be paramount. Oh, maybe we should make it that gear on Hulk just in general comes with a plus 20% bonus if resilience is on it. Cool. That's feature work. That's not going to show up next patch. Wouldn't that be neat? Like, just in general, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm Hulk. I'm just in general going to have higher resilience than anybody else because
Yeah,
things like
it feeds into the character fantasy.
the character fantasy, you bring up the combat, and I'm right there with you. The combat is amazing and all of that. The combat per character is also the reason why doing this at this time has been so difficult. When the game is built on exceptions, it is hard to get a systemic design. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying that I would trade one thing over another. I like the fact that Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America play so differently because I can play different games. I want them to have more emphasis on their interesting stuff. It takes time, it takes effort, and that is the primary work that I put into the raid gear coming up. Is I want to at least to even an nth degree grab that. Like, and I'm throwing it out there. It's like, and to Dan's point, like in his post or whatever, split operative's armor and split effector is like the pillar of what a good hero specific perk should be. It targets a specific ability. It does what it says on its thing. It has an immediate visual effect. It doesn't necessarily increase damage, but it can when everything lines up right. Great. More of that, please. You're right. But it's difficult to do because we need to find those elements. We need to extract the parts of it that can be modularized, because if we can spend a bit more time now creating the tools and the systems that we can expand upon things, we can make stuff like that faster. The raid, the reason why we haven't put out any posts about like the claw gear is because it's been being worked on for months. And there have been subtle changes here and there, and we don't want to put out like a teaser and it's like, no, and it completely changed, like we completely changed the wording or the icon or whatever and all that kind of stuff, because some are going to be hero specific. Some are going to have mechanical changes. Some are going to be universal. We are hitting a lot of those elements because this is that pushed forward to an idea of gear as not an afterthought, as a reason. And it has so much risk and so much other work that had to happen to make that true. Split effector is like one of those things that like I put up there. Like, this is an example. People go out of their way to use operative armor and they don't use anything else because of one perk. What are the other two perks on operative armor? I don't even remember. And I play Hawkeye a lot. And ultimately, it maybe doesn't even matter. That one perk could be the only thing on that, and I'd still probably use it because it is a gameplay mechanic change. How far can we push that? Well, I'm one person. I have absolutely no VFX experience. The voodoo that the pet team put in to make the 3 arrows turn into 7 arrows, I was trying to figure it out. I didn't get there. And I'm trying to do stuff like that to a small extent. You're going to see that larger with some heroes. You're going to see that like, with like a couple of other heroes, because I can only reach the stretch goal of a couple of heroes. That's my stretch goal. Like, I obviously had like super stretch goals where I touch every hero. I couldn't get there, but every hero is going to have something unique. This isn't going to be hive mind gear where gear is just 2 status effects and a potentiator. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like Omega gear where the entire thing is like you're going to have Cosmic Surge on every slot. Nah. It's going to have a theme. It's going to have pillars. And to your extent, at the very beginning of this thing, Dan, you were like, oh, I just want to get stat sticks that prop things up. So let me put out an example. What if one of your slots had a thing? Whatever, flag, whatnot. And that thing wasn't exactly powerful. It wasn't exactly useless, but it was a thing. And when that thing turned on, turned off, or whatever, another perk that was completely useless without that thing becomes viable. It's like, oh, okay, this is a perk. It needs that other perk to happen. All right. And now you get this kind of like cascading effect. It's a Lego block. It's like, okay, that thing turns on, then this thing turns on. All right, neat. That's a little close to what you're talking about, but now let me expand it one level. I don't want that thing that has the flag. What if my thing could work with another player's thing? That player's flag turns on, and now my thing works. I don't have to have that flag on my piece of gear as long as I'm playing with somebody that has the flag. That type of thing. This type of interaction is also missing from a lot of our gear, with the exception of Cosmic Aura. We don't have a lot of gear in our game, 5 perks maybe, that say, hey, your friend gets a bonus, or hey, you get a bonus being next to your friend. That's another part that we're kind of missing. We're missing mechanical additions and updates, which is, yes, something that we're working on. We're also missing the fact that this is a team game. We should have perks that do that.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that, and I like obviously a lot of what you were talking about was definitely future plans, thoughts, like I think that's awesome. Like the whole thought of like this perk activates this perk, and in this scenario, this useless perk becomes great. That's what's awesome about looter games. That's what's awesome about games like Diablo 2, Diablo 3, Path of Exile, all that stuff. You can literally throw together things that normally on their own are weak, don't matter, and all of a sudden make something cool out of it. That's what that's the uniqueness. That's what makes somebody an individual build. I think that's cool. If that's definitely the route or the goal, the end goal, I definitely support that, and I think that's definitely a path that should be pursued.
And I appreciate that. And again, like I'm putting out just hypotheticals and all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
I'm putting out like
thoughts.
thoughts. I'm putting out all this stuff that are whatever our ability is, whatever we want to do with gear. Like I have opinions on what I want to do with gear,
and whether or not it can be done is obviously outside of your hands sometimes.
Sometimes, okay, so outside of my hands.
I can answer that one if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. So is it outside of his hands? Sometimes, yes. And the reason is guys like me who are producers are making decisions based on other factors that designers are not.
You cut out there, Dan.
Dan.
I think we lost him there.
Yeah. Anyway, to kind of continue, he's going into the producer talk that producers get together and they plan out a sprint. They plan out the amount of time that goes on to things, and this amount of time needs to get X amount of things done.
Yep.
And if what I want to do has sound, has visual effects, has UI effects, that's 4 other teams. That's dozens of other people's time that might be doing something else to try and fix the game. The UI team is already going through a ton of stuff that they had to like update for Wakanda, and they're continuing to do so. They have so much stuff that they're on. So anytime it comes up like I need icons, producers are like, can you do without? Because man, they're doing some other really important stuff. And it's a matter of give and take. It's a matter of like, what can we get away with at one time? Do I actually require 15 icons for this? Can I get away with 3? That type of thing. So sometimes it's out of my hands. And now on the very literal sense, sometimes it's in my hand.
Yeah.
And my hands can only go so far with that work. I can only get to certain goals. Sometimes an idea fails either at like a technical level or at a gameplay or at a testing level, and then it can't continue because I'll go all the way back when I worked at a place that made terrain for board games. Warsenal we made terrain for a board game called Infinity, and when I was trying to make I was trying to make a terrain that we could actually sell. And so the lead designer, Jay, he was like, yeah, okay, give me a couple of good designs. And so I brought to him like a modular design of some type of like stacking barricade that we could sell in like packs of 3, and you could make like a column or whatever. And we didn't make it. We didn't sell it. Like it was a good design, but didn't go anywhere. Well, yeah, hold on there, really quick, Sensational. I'll let you talk here. Let me finish
Sure.
this one line. And so he's like, it's a good attempt. It's an interesting idea. We got to rework its selling potential because obviously it's a very small company. They need to sell. They can't just make whatever product they want because there's a bottom line. And he gave me a very Boston piece of advice of sometimes you just got to let your child die so you can move on to a better one. And I'm like, it's like a really dark way of putting it, but sometimes an idea is good theory, and when you let it go, you can end up at a better idea as long as you don't hold on to that last one.
Yeah.
So, got to move on. Go ahead, Sensational.
I think he's just unmuted and maybe just some noise is going on there.
Okay, fine, sure. Anyway,
But if you don't mind, I think that we've kind of covered this pretty well. I kind of wanted to talk about like I guess moving on to like the next point that I had in my thing, which was the rarity tiers and just general progression.
Sure.
Is that okay if we kind of go into that?
Sure. Okay. Try to make the questions like a little bit more targeted so we can keep the answers like a little bit more distinct,
Yep.
and we can go from like one to the other like really quick. And
Yep,
again,
no problem. I got you.
Before we continue, let me just open up because we got a lot of people in here. Did anybody have any questions on what was being said before we like move on to like rarity tiers and like distinction and all that? All right, I'll get 3 seconds. Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. Basically, it's just going to go along with kind of what I posted to you earlier. Obviously, the current state of the game is that exotics are almost an afterthought, and the reason is because one, it's so hard to get those certain specific perks. You know, your damage buff, your applicators, whatever you want on specific pieces, and so when you only get like one shot a week per hero or whatever you go with. It's easier to, especially when the stats on legendaries and epics really aren't that different than an exotic. It's easier to jump into something like Tundra Vault and literally just bypass enemies and do nothing but just open chest, return to the Quinjet, go back, open more chests, and just roll that RNG loot wheel as many times as you can. It's almost easier and better to do that, and it feels better doing that to make your character build than getting an exotic. And so
Hey, sorry, Artie.
no, you're fine.
I just want to interrupt you. I had a great little tirade there. I don't know if you guys heard any of that. My entire laptop froze. So
Oh, man.
I don't know. Did you guys hear anything I said?
No, you cut out pretty quick. So
Oh,
you're
did
good.
I?
Yeah, it's okay.
So I was
Alex
like,
had
hey,
you
this is
covered, man.
why- I was like, hey, this is why Alex can't, and then I just cut out.
Yeah, no, Alex did a pretty good job of explaining your end.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I apologize. That happens, but
No, you're good, man.
No problem. So,
yeah.
one encapsulated question at a time. So first
All
things
right.
first.
So
Go ahead.
no, I was kind of just laying the groundwork for the conversation.
Sure.
Basically, because the stats are not really that much better, or they're actually about the same from exotics to legendaries, and then epics aren't really that much worse, you end up with, epics and legendaries basically just being outright better most of the time than exotics because of one, the restrictions put on current exotics. Obviously, I understand we talked about that earlier about the, certain of them being locked to certain certain stat rolls because of the direction you're going. But just in general, though, the stats being basically identical on exotics and legendaries has caused most people to pretty much just farm Tundra Vault. Like that's pretty much your go to. If I'm going into a play session and I want to improve a character that I don't have a finalized build on, I'm going to Tundra Vault. I'm literally just opening chests. I'm bypassing enemies. I'm not even really playing the game.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But is there like a final?
Yeah. Sorry. I guess
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is like with your vision, is there going to be a plan for like something where like I know with Discordant Sound, you guys are going to be doing a normal mode and a heroic mode. Is there potentially going to be something where like maybe, like half the time you get like a legendary drop and it has less stats, lower stats than like say the exotic that can drop from it? Like maybe the exotic drops with like an extra 10 precision compared, or it can roll like an extra 10, 15 precision than a legendary. Just something that like stat wise even makes them stand out to make it where like exotics are better than your legendaries. They're better than your epics.
So I'll answer that with 2 points. There is a difference between the elite and normal raid, just beyond the elite and normal raid. And most of that answers are going to come in a future blog post that I'm working with Andy Wong about. Like
Okay.
there's a lot of information there. I don't want to say that 14 times
you're
to
fine.
all of the people here at the Discord. So I'm working with Andy Wong to write a blog post to kind of iron out all of that, to like
Okay.
say all of that kind of stuff.
Is the goal going forward to make sure that exotics are almost strictly better than legendaries?
See, now we're getting into a weird kind of like design philosophy of. So let me put this to. I'll say a couple of truths, and there's definitely like player sentiment, and there's reality, and all that kind of stuff. The stat ceiling of exotics in live in game is 16 to 30% higher than legendary. That is true. They overlap in the middle, but the stat ceiling is way higher, and it's just somewhere in our system the RNG of picking higher numbers is like crap.
Yeah,
And I'm working on that. But
and that kind of plays
it's
into.
true.
I'm sorry, that kind of plays into why Tundra Vault then becomes your best farm, is because you can roll that thing so many times that your legendaries are ending up on the high end, where your exotics are probably ending up in the middle to the low end, I'm assuming,
Yes,
correct?
like exactly. You have so few rolls at exotics that you're getting like the average, and the average happens to be on the high end of legendaries because you have so many rolls. You get that more often. So there's a lot to unpack with that. That system is set up so when you improve or upgrade gear, it improves the stats and all that kind of stuff, and exotics improve X percentage better, blah blah blah. Whatever. So now, technically true, exotics have a higher stat cap, but that doesn't feel what is actually happening because the lower end of exotics, which is still a thing you can roll, overlaps with legendary. So now we're getting into the point of like, do we want exotics to be strictly better? Well, if we did, and there is definitely an argument to say that we should, if we did, that would mean the game is only about numbers, not just about stats. But now there is a part B over here where exotics are side grades of legendary. They have the fun stuff, but they may have a bigger trade-off, the idea of trade-off in there, and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of alluded that to before. That's more difficult. That takes a little bit more time. Maybe that's how we want to go. And again, this all stems from the traffic light around damage buff. Wherever we go with damage buff, that's the way we're going to go. Let's say we do a bunch of crazy stuff with damage buff. Man, maybe it would behoove us to turn exotics into side grades. You sacrifice 80% of one thing and you gain 120% of two other things. It's like all exotics only drop with one stat, and that stat goes to 200 type of thing. An example. Not saying that's happening. What's up?
Can I add to this real quick for exotics? I feel like that's kind of missing the point in terms of what people want. I'm not saying from your point of view. I'm saying people wanting more stats on exotics isn't really how they should function, in my opinion. You should have that sort of functionality where they have perks on them that are more ability driven that you can't get anywhere else, something unique. But it's also got that problem that happened to Marvel Heroes that I don't know if you played that, but once you got to the point where you had unique sets, if you had all those unique pieces of gear, you never really went to anything else. That ended up being the best thing for the characters ultimately, other than artifacts. But
yeah, there's a linear power progression, in which case we make the exotic rarity quality just the tippy top. So not only does it have higher numbers, but it also has exclusive perks and all that kind of stuff. And eventually we are comfortable with players having just those across their stat. And we build the entire progression path of you going to activities that are harder because those are the only places with that. That's fine. We need that is a direction we can go. That absolutely is a direction we can go. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong. I would be comfortable with that as long as everything else I just said in that is true. There's the other side of like, we make exotics weird. We make exotics off the beaten path, and we put them in more locations. We make them a little bit more randomized and all of that kind of stuff. We put some things in there. We make hammer gear exotics and all that kind of stuff. And hammer gear exotics only drop with might, and that might, but it also drops with like a negative precision or something like that. We make exotics weird because we want exotics to drive min-maxing because damage buff still is there. Damage buff being a min-maxing perk. So again, it's a matter of the direction we go on. Exotics will follow that path. Exotics can be many things.
So,
And it's all a matter of like making sure we get to that point. We want exotics to be desirable. How?
all right.
Give
So,
them a unique gameplay experience. Like
Yeah.
they serve some function for the character that the other gear does not.
I mean, but we kind of already break that rule. And again, exotics can break rules. That's a part of that whole thing. We kind of already break that rule with hive mind gear because hive mind gear is a little homogenous for all players. You get potentiator, you get Jarvis barrier, you get things that help your parry, you get things that help your evade. That kind of breaks that mold because there's nothing hero specific on it. There's nothing to say that we couldn't add hero specific stuff to it. But then it's time, it's effort, and all that kind of stuff. It would break the mold of that idea of exotic of always being gameplay defining. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that would be the effect if we take that hard stance on exotics at that point.
So I kind of want to just jump here a little bit. As a strictly like mostly a loot player background, like that's what I play the most. I not even talking about damage buff, just in general. Like when I get an exotic drop or something that I know is like the top tier, I do want it to feel like it's the best. Like whether it's, just it's got increased stats, it changes gameplay, whatever. So even if you're talking about like where you put these things or where they drop from, I actually enjoy games where bosses obviously they have loot tables, and so like you kill this boss, you get this, you get a roll, and then it gives you this. I'm not even against things like bosses dropping legendary versions that are, lesser, that aren't as good as the exotics. Kind of like similar to what you have like with Elite Hives now, where like they can roll exotics, but they don't always. But when I get that exotic, I want that feeling of like I got an exotic, like this is awesome. And that's where maybe those increased stats come from, or whatever else comes along with them.
Yeah. And and honestly, I can't really answer anything more to that, but like, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one other point on there of, epics in relation to legendary. Yeah, you know what? You're going to see a much bigger change in how those three rarities actually stack up later. You're going to see a much bigger change on how you actually interact in looting those things later. So again, I can't really go into that right now.
No, you're good.
But this is, again, these are plans that have been set in motion. What you see right now, I now have the numbers to say, yeah, you know what? Exotics having a higher stat ceiling doesn't matter when you roll 20 times on legendary, and more often than not, you get stats that are higher. I'm the same way. I have Captain America gear with 3 stats that are 2 above a legendary piece of gear that I got from a vault for Captain America. Yeah, that sucks. And I went in. I'm like, I was the one that set up the damn stats. And I was confused. I'm like, wait a minute, did I really do this? And I went there and I looked at it. I'm like, yes, this is a possibility. It sucks. I rolled a 2. I basically on a D20, I rolled a 2 on my exotics and I rolled an 18 on my legendary. And I was like, damn, what the hell? It's there. It was there. It was a part of that design, and part of that design has to get updated, especially with how gear is going into the future with like improvement of everything. And it will. It'll definitely move forward. Stats is one of those things that has to, like, it's part of power creep. It's part of game design. Its stuff is going to go up. But how fast did that stuff go up? What is its cap? What is its acceleration curve? Maybe some stats are going to be higher than others. That type of thing. These are all stuff that's going to come out, and I can't change the feeling of what it is right now. It's live.
Yeah.
So you're right. And we now understand that feeling a little bit more now, because when I told QA to hey, please give yourself X number of epic and X number of legendary, and we're legendary were the sum of legendary always above epic? Yes, it absolutely was. But when going back there, what was the sum that it was above epic? Was it 2 or was it 20? It wasn't a lot. And so there's a lot to be said about testing procedure that was unknown that we went through. So like I did the rarity rework. And so, also, did you before the rarity rework 1.7, the stats of epic and legendary were not close to the same. They were exactly the same.
Yeah, that was not good.
Which was not good. There was no difference between a 100 epic and a 120 epic. It was the same stat group that it would pull from. I changed that. And I added those in. And what did I miss out of that entire thing? I spent months testing with QA to make sure that I wouldn't get random gear dropping with like random stats and all that. And what ended up happening is people saw that they were still getting quote unquote trash gear, which was at a -1 or a -3 PL when they were at max PL. Yeah, that was an oversight. I didn't go to the max because that wasn't the purpose of that change. The purpose of the change was to make it that everybody felt that there was a difference getting to 130. And then there was the fact that when you got to 130, that experience was not a part of the initial testing equation. And I immediately knew what the problem was. Like everybody's comment, like, why am I still getting power level 129 stuff? And I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I need to turn off trash gear or trash loot drops. You're at max PL. I changed that. Thankfully, we got it in fast. But it just kind of like focuses on the player sentiment versus what you put down on a piece of paper. Man, you can sometimes get different outcomes.
Oh, I agree. And obviously, like you know this, this game, it's going to attract players from all sorts of different backgrounds just because of the IP involved. You get players like myself that, I'm a looter. I love loot. I love the pursuit of loot. I love, making builds. And then you got players that literally just want to play as the Avengers. And so, when you get that big of a, net of players, you're going to have different responses.
Yeah. So I know I kind of went on a little bit of a ramble. My bad.
You're good.
To that, did you had a follow up kind of point that you were leading to?
I'm actually trying to remember where I was. So we were talking just exotics being basically that's really all it was. I mean,
rarity difference, exotics being like some type of difference. They have to be some type of different. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was going.
Yeah, whether or not we tackle it just with stats, or whether or not we tackle it with what I personally believe we should, which is more gameplay affecting stuff, like Captain America was pointing out. That is a matter of technical ability, hands, and options that we can get. The tools we are creating, the effort, the groundwork we are creating with Claw Gear is going to be a stepping stone to allow us to make a lot of these gameplay affecting perks faster. Because I basically had to break a bunch of things to find out that we can do a lot of things fast. But I had to go through that process. I had to go through that slow process of being like, man, our lightning tool is badass. And it is complicated as hell to use.
Yeah. No, I think that's good that we're, I mean, I know I think I can speak for a lot of people here to say that at least, knowing that the person designing the loot that's in charge of doing this is on the same page of understanding that the players want to have that feeling, that special feeling. When an exotic drops, they want it to be a special occasion, a special feeling. And just, knowing that that is your design intent, I think that's a good thing moving forward.
I'm glad. I at least hope I can convey upon all of the players one feeling. I played Destiny 2, and when I got Mechanism Trick sleeves, I hated it. I still hate them. I know I can get bigger numbers, but the entire gameplay loop around Mechanism Trick sleeves sucks. Because it's just numbers. And then I look over on the other side, I'm like, what do Titans get? They get a chest piece that just allows them to not reload auto rifle. I like auto rifles. Why can't I have that thing? And again, I'm salty about that. Fine, but that thing over there has a direct gameplay effect. This thing over here kind of has a direct gameplay effect as long as I jump through this hoop of fire and have this certain weapon equipped, but not being used. So I am on board with. I want exotic. I mean, hell, the potentiator perk change to Hive Mind, which I think I made back in March, directly came around because I sent an angry email saying, "I am Iron Man. I got shock, light combo finisher, shock, light signature, and cryo potentiator on my melee piece." And I'm like, I don't have cryo range gear. This piece is garbage.
Yep.
And I'm like, and it was just through the element of going through this that I was able to put together just like a proposal. I'm like, make the potentiator match, which ultimately was actually incredibly easy to do after the fact. But like, it's a matter of like intent. It's a matter of understanding. It's a matter of playing. Our GS team and a lot of our GS connected team, like we play. Like I run play tests just to test the claw gear. Like I'm like, all right, everybody debug claw gear, and we're gonna run Stark Realities. I want you to tell me if it's fun or not. And I mean, more often than not, I just have producers going like, what does this mean? Like I didn't know that Captain America had that ability. What is this and all that? Fine, I'm
Yeah,
answering a bunch of questions.
and that's what I think is
But
really cool about this is that you're talking to people here that we play with top end gear, we play with the top end builds, we play in the reality of what the game is, and so that's awesome that we're able to give this kind of feedback and know that it's being it's being heard. And like I said, I don't want to put the community manager or any of that kind of responsibilities on you, but I just think this is awesome that
but but
yeah, you're hearing us. You're hearing actual players that are playing the game in optimal ways, and and you're on the same page as us. And knowing that you play as well, and you're seeing these same things, it's good to know that the game is in those kind of hands.
I'm glad. I'm super glad to hear that. And I just this is me coming out here. I'm not a community manager. I don't have Twitter. I will roll my eyes back into my head the next time I read a post from anybody, from any company of listening, caring, and all that kind of stuff. Because again, I know it sounds like corporate. No matter how true it is, it sounds like corporate. I am here. I am listening because my salt mine runneth deep on stuff. And I want cool things. I want cool things. I also understand it takes effort. Thankfully, I'm now in a position where somebody's like, fine, you do it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna.
That's awesome
So,
though.
yeah,
Did you want to continue on this? I guess my last, like, if you want to ask if anybody has anything else about rarity tiers or anything, but the last point I really
yeah,
made was
let's.
just about champion system and stuff.
So let me actually get ahead of you, and then I'm actually going to open up for a couple of questions on the champion system. I was not a part of the champion system. Champion system was a system outside of the progression team, kinda, because only one section of the progression team was working on the champion system. I was working on gear at the time. I was 100% focused on loot stratification to make sure that there was a stat differentiation between power level 10 and 50. Newsflash, there wasn't at launch. And so to say that, oh, the champion system over there is like failing to live up its expectations, okay, don't worry. I am yelling just like you. It's just a matter of the progression team and the GS team coming back around to it after all of these things. We're working on a ton of things, and the change to one system has to be tested against everything it interacts with. Fortunately, the champion system touches everything on the hero. The most complicated thing about our game that breaks all the time. So, time and effort, the champion system will get addressed.
Okay. I guess kind of what I want to go with is like the funny thing about the champion system is that in a game like this, it almost feels like it's trivial. Like it almost like doesn't even, regardless of like whether it's working, not working, undertuned, overtuned, whatever. It almost feels like it's not even needed if the loot was in a better spot. And like I think you're on the same page with me of like the progression of that. But the champion system, I think like just in essence is just trying to act as like something like a progression system for players to do, kind of in lieu of the fact that like loot wasn't quite there. And so if loot were to get there, I don't even think there would be any focus or really that much care about the champion system, honestly.
Yeah, no comment on that. Anyway,
That's fine. Sorry, I guess I didn't mean
it's
to kind of ramble like that,
no.
but yeah,
You
yeah.
have no problem rambling. I can say some things. I can't say some things.
Yeah.
That is a statement you said. Moving on.
Okay.
Yeah, when
So-
it comes to certain things, Alex, thank you so much for chatting with the community. But as Alex can tell you, as many of our developers can as well, there are just certain things we're just not allowed to talk about, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great ideas, great suggestions, etc. Certain things come up here. Obviously, there's certain things that are contentious from the community. We understand that. The goal should be, when you get an opportunity to chat with folks like Alex and myself, is, hey, what do you focus on? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't mean to go
Hey,
away
no,
like that.
no worries, no worries.
You're-
it's totally
you're-
cool.
yeah,
You're totally great.
you're asking an element. You're asking a question in connected with progression. You know, one of the things that I help manage. I understand that, but you're also asking things about a system that I wasn't a part of, that I wasn't in charge
Right,
of, and I wasn't moving
right.
forward.
And,
I can't say
and
anything.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that as well, a lot of folks ask me questions in Discord or on Reddit. I don't have charge of. I don't work on. We are a multi-compartmental studio. Some of the things I focus on, I have a broader reach than Alex does, but at the same time, they're just things we cannot discuss simply because, well, we're a private business. The end, right? But also, we are here, we are talking, and anything you guys want to talk to Alex about, what he works on specifically, let's do it, right? And if there's things you guys want to talk about, pet, enemies, heroes, etc., please feel free to hit me up. Happy to talk about it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
on that note-
I'm fine closing out the champion system talk then there. That's fine
Yeah,
because
but-
obviously that's a separate thing.
Completely separate. Moving on from that, let's open up. We got a ton of people in here in Discord. Awesome. Let's kind of go down the list. Like if you got something, like don't immediately just start pouting out the questions, like call out or something. Let's get some questions in here related to gear, related to perks, related to the work that I was talking about, or something else. But I do want to preface one thing when we're talking about perks or gear and all that kind of stuff. Ideas, fine. Write them down. Put them in like general chat, like do this like post or whatever. It's like, perk idea, because we could expand upon it. There's just so much stuff to unpack on all that kind of stuff there. I don't know if I have enough water beside me to like start a 4-hour conversation on that kind of stuff.
I'm going to open with the first question.
Yeah.
Alex, if you don't mind, I know that internally Alex has been working on a very intricate dev post that will be published soon. I was curious, Alex, if you know, I don't, when that would be completed and what we can expect from what it is that you're going to put out when that does become publicly available and what that chat would be about. Now, before you answer, I would also like to preface, it's not out yet, right? So we're not going to talk about what's in it, but it is a talk about what Alex works on, and it's a very good dev blog. I'm just curious, Alex, if anyone's told you when that would come out, because I'm excited to read it with the public.
Andy hasn't told me a date of when the first one's coming out. I mean, it had a due date by like today, today or tomorrow or something like that. So I can only assume that blog post is going to come out relatively soon. And that the first one is going to talk about a lot of things that I couldn't talk about here involving gear. And then the second post is probably going to come around the second week of November. And that one's going to be closer to our updates because we want to talk about some of the stuff in our update. And I think Andy's trying to get me to actually go on a video blog, like on Twitch or whatever, so I can yell at the internet some more about some of the stuff that's going to be showing up in Claw gear. Because again, not the raid. I want to talk about the gear. I want to talk about the rewards. We're going to have somebody else talk about the raid itself and the cool stuff that's going to be happening. So,
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to reading it as well, along with the public and fielding questions and answers about that. I just wanted to first let the public know that's something that's coming. So look forward to that. And it'll be sort of, I don't know, Alex, I would qualify it qualify it as being kind of your thoughts on what we're working on, right? And I think it's it'll be a good read and you guys will enjoy it and it'll spark some more discussions, right? So I think that's great.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I kind of just want to jump in, just kind of, it sounds like we're kind of closing up a little bit here. I just wanted to, honestly, just Thank you for even just listening. And like my biggest takeaway from this whole thing isn't necessarily that you're going to go back and you're going to do, anything or, even one thing that we suggested, but just the fact that, you heard what I was saying. We had an open conversation about this. This is awesome. And I know this is not your scope. This isn't what you should be doing. But I just think this was really good and it was awesome. I think this is really good for the community.
Thanks. I mean, I kind of think so too. I'm with Dan on that. I ran 40K campaign games when I worked at a game store. Community starts just with like a couple of people showing up once a week. It'll grow from there. But
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I started getting into this. And to be honest, I've only been with Crystal Dynamics since March of this year. I've loved my time here so far, but I wanted to make sure that I spent enough time learning the tools, learning the game engine, learning what we do, learning the game, understanding what our plans were, what we were working on currently, what I was producing currently, and then what our future plans are before I came online to talk to people. Because it would have been foolish of me to jump on in week 1 and be like, hi, I'm Dan, I'm new. Let's talk about everything I don't understand. So
perfect.
I'm here now. I have a very in-depth understanding of everything that we are doing for the most part, specifically in my area of PET, which is player enemy traversal. And Alex has a great, of course, understanding of what he works on in his area. So we are happy to field questions in those areas, and that's why we're here. And like Alex said, that's where it starts. We also, like our fans, want to change the perception of how our company is viewed, how we are viewed as developers, and how the game is continuing to be developed. And we're going to continue to talk to you guys and do that moving forward.
Now, with
That's
that,
just
with that preamble, Captain America, and I do appreciate it, but let's get some questions. We got 28 people in here. Somebody's got to have a question, unless you do.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. It's like really great to have transparency in here with the community. Have people
now I'm the asshole on that one. Thank you.
I mean, anybody in this channel can tell how much you care about it, how much you care about the gear in the game and the reward of it. And I just think that's great. That's great to hear, and it's great to know that there's somebody over there at Crystal Dynamics that understands and feels the same way that we do on a lot of the topics here.
Glad. I'm glad. I'm not the only one, but I understand the whole sentiment of like visibility. But on that note, anybody like going down the list, like 7-bit, alpha, anybody have questions?
To elaborate on what he was saying, I think that one of the things that I know a lot of people like to hear is the fact that you play the game. Because I know that's a common complaint. You'll hear people troll and say stupid stuff about like, oh, they don't even play the game, they don't know the game. Just knowing you play the game, I think, is an awesome thing for the community.
Yeah, I got all my heroes to 5150. I got Black Panther's the only one that I haven't finished out the challenge card on. I'm like on tier 4. I just need to get back on, finish those weeklies. I'm not gonna buy it. I'm gonna finish it out legit.
If it's okay, I do have a question. I posted it in chat as well because I didn't know. I came to this kind of late because I was hosting D&D. But a few nights ago when you were here discussing and answering questions with everyone, something that really stuck out to me is you mentioned something about the gear and other things encouraging roles moving forward. And I wondered if that was something you were allowed to discuss now, and if that meant it would be encouraged like strictly for the raids, or if you guys plan to put that in more content moving forward, maybe even older content going back. And is that based solely on the gear and perks, or are you also looking at like abilities and heroics to encourage that type of stuff?
So abilities and heroics is strictly in the realm of pet. That's part of the whole like a player enemy traversal type of thing. So whether or not a skill can actually affect a player's role or role potential, that's something at the hero level. I affect everything after the fact. I affect customization. I affect or modify or give options of modifying towards things. But on that note of like player role, one of the bigger points that I've been trying to kind of push forward with some of Pet's help is the fact that, man, our defensive perks do not live up to anywhere close to our offensive perks. So the idea of a tank is not only unfeasible, but, not fun because you don't have anything that allows you to be a tank and be fun at the same time. And this is kind of going back of like some of the reasoning of why I put so many damn payload perks in the Omega gear because, again, I updated the Omega gear from what it was. What it was before was kind of a carbon copy of Hive Mind gear, but just Cosmic Surge instead of Jarvis Barrier. And I wanted something a little bit different. So I narrowed things down. I made some preferred attributes. I put in a lot of payload perks. And if you have a full set of Omega gear, you just throw out missiles everywhere. It's at least something different. It's the best I could do at the time. Not great. And it definitely gave me ample evidence going forward of like, it can't be the last thing we work on. It has to be something we work on before. But back to your point of team roles. We need more perks that say I do this better, but in a more bombastic way. We have damage down. I can be a glass cannon. I can be a dude who does like heroics all the time. I can be somebody invisible all the time. We have that down. Our offensive perks are down. We can offense that. We need perks that make you a better tank. We need perks that allow you to be a tank better. We only have a few perks that give you other options to taunt, primarily on Hulk and that kind of stuff. And that's a step forward, but that's not a great way forward. We need things that give you the option, that give you substantial armor difference. We need armor differences. We need things to help kind of enforce that capability. And in a future blog post, hopefully you'll get some of that out of it, where I'm the primary way of encouraging that. And again, this is not something I can go into super way right now, but the primary way of encouraging roles currently in our game is combat location. Where you are with Hulk, where you are with Black Widow is going to encourage you what type of combat you are actually going to be facilitating. Are you a glass cannon? Are you a tank? Are you bullying the enemy? That type of thing. And so I have to work in that type of route, plus all of the taunt abilities that we kind of have access to. So yeah, I want perks to help dictate role. If you want to be an unstoppable steamroller potato sack of HP Hulk, I want to give you the options to do that. If you want to kind of get there, but not exactly be as good as Hulk, but with like Kamala or Captain America, I'm going to give you the options, but it might not be as efficient. If that answers your question in a, I don't know, 5-paragraph way.
Yeah, that does answer the question. I just want to say thank you for answering the question. And yeah, I may be newer to the scene of this game, but I'm really enjoying it, and I am very happy to hear that this is being worked on. And yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else? Next. I mean, we could just go down the list and I call people out, or
That's what
we
you
could.
gotta do. Just call
yeah.
people out. Just
All right,
that's
Alpha,
what I
you're
like.
next in the list. What's up?
I have a question.
All right. So yeah, pass is definitely an option. We're working on that type of thing. Burst. If you don't answer, it's going to be a pass. Captain America, you definitely been here. We'll give other people a chance. Not calling you out or anything, but let's put everybody in here. Casual Avenger, how about you? People not know how to unmute?
Dan, you
Okay,
got a question?
so I would like very much, I know Thor, I know you're listening, if you have your mic activated, I think Thor has some questions for his subreddit group. I guarantee he does.
Okay, let's jump down to the bottom of the list then. Thor, how about you? Are you here?
I am here, but man, I have to get everything together, and I don't have it right now.
All right, I'll give you. I'll call out a couple more people, but we're gonna come back to you pretty fast. Let's start out at the bottom. Zat Murdoch, all the way at the bottom. Let's go from the bottom up a little bit.
Hey yo, dude, I don't have any questions right now, but thank you for doing this.
Zat's excited about Spider-Man. I know that for sure.
What's Spider-Man? I don't know any Spider-Man.
All right, anyway, Watcher, how about you? Got any questions? But I'm also glad you're excited, man. Keep it up. Watcher Butter apparently doesn't have any questions. All right, we're gonna flip-flop. Chosen, any questions?
Nope, just listening. But keep up the good work.
Awesome, thanks. Dorkington. I guess not. Back to the bottom. You, Unpant. Nope. Tushy?
Hey, I was just wondering. I mean, I know there's stuff you can't really talk about, but I think a lot of us here would really like, because there's pieces of gear I've gotten that just, I mean, they're good perks and all, but I mean, I think a reroll station would go a long way.
We kind of brought this up a little bit before. To basically put it into perspective, a reroll station would exacerbate any problems we have. Currently, one of the problems, one of the pillars, one of the design traffic lights that we're at is damage buff. A reroll station would exacerbate that problem unless we fix the underlying issue, which is we need other perks to be desirable. So a reroll station is desirable, and it is definitely like something we're looking into for like feature request and engineering. Yes, but unless we fix damage buff, or unless we fix the options problem, which we actually want players to have options, a reroll station will only make the problem clearer. So, one step at a time on that one. We got to make everything desirable before we actually get to the point where it's like we give people the option to spend resource to like kind of tweak with their gear internally on that aspect. But yeah, it's a thing. So moving on, back up to the top. High Ruler.
Oh, am I muted? Oh, I am. No, I'm just chilling. Thanks, though.
Okay. Below that, Lejeune.
You good?
All right. Let's go back down to the bottom, working our way up. Thor.
Oh,
We're back to you, Thor.
Wait,
Oh, yeah. Huh?
Oh, I'm trying
Well,
to see
June,
if
you
my
gotta
mic
have some.
is my mic working.
Yeah, your
Yes.
mic's working.
Okay. So, I have a few questions when it comes to the perks. Well, something that you could probably answer, I think, hopefully.
Sure.
So, as you know, with Wakanda being added to it with the new gear perks, where I think it's called Flauntless buff, where it crits you get a damage buff.
Yep.
Is there a particular reason where, like, say for instance, it has a set stat where it's going to only have like might, proficiency, and resilience? Have you like gotten any feedback on that one, or like why was it just locked to those certain stats?
Balance. It's obviously better than the other two versions of the crit because it's universal. It's not just on range. It's not just on melee. So there has to be balance. It can't be the best because that would be the only answer. Its downside is the fact that its attributes that it has access to are limited. It's limited to a balanced loadout. It's limited to a balanced attribute setup because it's universal in application.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yes, I do read Reddit. I do go out there. I see the videos where they're like, "Why can't I just get this with might on it?" There's a reason. Because if you got it with might on it, or if you got it with might and precision, what other piece of gear is there then?
Yeah. I see that from that perspective, because if you got the perfect role, it's say for instance you got like might, valor, and proficiency or resolve, then you wouldn't really need no other piece, to be honest, unless there's something. Okay. I see.
Preferred attributes, like everybody looks at preferred attributes of like, why does it have this? Why does it have this? Preferred attributes is two parts. One part to give it a theme to like, oh, it has attributes that definitely bounce off of the perks, setup, and everything. Second, it's a balancing element. Powerful perks may come with preferred attributes that are not necessarily power-inducing.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah. And Lejeune, if you have any more questions, feel free to DM me directly, and I'll answer them for you. But let's move on.
Yep. Moving on. Let's bounce down to the bottom. Superstar. Unless Thor, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I have no questions. I'm just chiming in.
Okay. Thor.
He can go ahead. I'll go after him.
No, I think that was Superstar. Yeah.
No, but Superstar was also just listening in. So above that, Struggler.
Yeah, I have one question. I'll throw it out here, I guess. Can you hear me just fine?
Yep.
So in the Omega level threat, I don't know if this is your field because I joined the call relatively late. When you beat the Warbot, is there any way, like, I feel like fighting the Warbot doesn't really reward the player. in any way?
Well, I mean, technically it doesn't. You get XP.
Oh, I mean, I was wondering if there was like, would there ever be any consideration to like have like a gear drop from mid-mission boss encounters like that? You know,
Reward cadence and reward frequency are two things I help manage, and are two things that I yell very loudly at the GS team. The producers tell me what can be done in what amount of time based on engineering feedback.
Gotcha.
So things not working now is not because we don't want them to. All of the rewards happening at the end of Family Reunion is not because that's what we want. It's because those are some of the features or options we have.
Yeah, and I can piggyback on that. From a production standpoint, those were choices made based on time of development, manpower we had to do what we had to do before a release date, and it is something we continue to look at, and maybe we can reassess or do different things in the future. Sometimes, given, for lack of a better way to put it, everyone's doing everything all at once. What kind of support can we get for this feature versus that feature? We make decisions based on that. Because we make those decisions, we make hard calls on, yes, this makes sense. No, this doesn't. Should we revisit this? Yes, it's in the books. We'll revisit it. This, no, we won't. So maybe that answers your question, but it's not that developers don't want to do certain things like Alex is saying. It's that it was either a time cost thing or it was a time thing. A lot of times it's so many people, not enough people. How do we get this done by this time? And some things get moved. That's all.
Just a little bit of detail on that, Struggler. I'm mad that we can't do that. Like, because there are tools there, but we sacrificed them for something way better, and that's coming up later. So I'm mad because I'd love to have like a raid style like reward cadence. However, I understand that what we're going to get out of it, at least in the short term, is going to be better for now. But I want that too. But anyway, moving on. Let's stay down there really quick. We'll go to Sonic.
No, I got no questions, but thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no problem, man. All right. Back up to the top.
Just real quick too, Alex. If you guys want to get mad at a dev for production decisions, DM me. We'll talk. Alex is not in charge of those decisions, so please don't attack him or anything with those kind of things. But absolutely hit me up. Let's chat. I'm happy to.
You can maybe be mad at me about, like Lejeune brought up, it's like, why are these attributes on the Sonic gear that has faultless buff? Well, yeah, I chose that. You can go ahead and be mad at me. I might not care.
Yeah,
I might not care,
okay.
but yeah, you can be mad at me for that one.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, like, yeah, if we fuck up, screw up, yeah, we'll own it.
Let's go. All right, back up to the top. Miller Light. 2 seconds. Yes, it's a pass. Marketplace. Question. It's not just me, right? Everybody's just staying muted.
Yeah, they're just staying muted. You're good.
All right, let's go back down to the bottom. Smash.
I don't have any questions. I'm just there to listen.
Cool.
That is the best radio voice I have heard in 10 years. Can you please start a podcast?
Yeah, that was some
Smash,
Arnold
start a
Schwarzenegger stuff.
podcast. Amazing.
Kind of sounds like
that a lot.
all right, Shrek, how about you?
Yeah, hey, thanks for letting me chime in. So I had a question related to like exotics and agency. I think we kind of like talked about this yesterday in general chat, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
Yeah, so when you start the game, you're kind of in this zone where you're trying to like figure things out, and so whatever like perks you get, you kind of accept it because you don't really have much of a choice. You're focusing on other things like raising your PL or like getting skill points or trying to get through the campaign. However, once you get to that level of like 150 and you reach like endgame situations, you get a bit more frustrated with the RNG because you know what perks you want and what works to like reflect your build, but like the agency and loot doesn't change. So what I was wondering was with like, I mentioned this in like the feedback channel as well, is just like having like the autonomy to choose which perks you want. Like for example, like the fundamental first perk stays the same, but the second one is like you get to choose your status effect, like gamma or like sonic or like plasma. So is that something like
this kind of rolls back into the perk re-rolling problem
right?
Of
Yeah.
if there's an answer, then everything if given 3 choices, but one of them's a Pinto, one of them is a 1996 Honda Civic, and the other one is a Lamborghini Countach, who is going to choose option 1 and 2?
I'll take that Pinto.
Okay, there are some weird people out there. I understand that. So the problem is not a matter of like, oh, would that be cool? Sure. But we have to make sure that the choice is actually reasonable, that there actually is a choice. Because if there's only one legit option, it's not a choice. And what we're actually giving everybody is extra steps to getting gear.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And this does not necessarily apply to Marvel's Avengers. It applies to all games. As a game developer, as a designer specifically, if you give unlimited choices to users, you have opened a box that can't be fixed. It would cause so many problems. If you can give the user what I would say the illusion of control, which isn't really true, but it's sort of, right? Yes, in XYZ circumstance, you get 4 choices. Cool. If we can balance all 4 choices against every other user in that same circumstance with the same 4 choices, that's reasonable. If we had to try and balance any game, not just this one, with unlimited user free will choice, the game would break. So that lends itself to the concept of loot picking up, gear perks, boosters, etc. How do you balance all that? And the way that we do it as game developers is really simple. If you didn't know, it's, well, we give you 4, 5 choices, 3 choices, and sure, you get to decide, and it does affect your gameplay, but that's it. Because if we gave you more, how would we ever balance that? It would break the game so badly that it wouldn't even be playable. So I think we have to look at that concept as well, not only as developers, but as players. How much free will do you want? And man, I hope for the day where we get that game where it's like, there's a million choices and we can just all choose anything we want and it works. I strive for that day. We are not there. So then that begs the question, well, how do we design choices for players? And that's why Alex has a job and why he is so good at what he does.
Awesome, thanks. Appreciate
Thanks, man. All right, let's stay down at the bottom. Santa, any questions?
So I'm just listening. All my questions would be about future heroes, so
I'll
just listen. I know.
Not my department.
I know. Thank you for this, though.
Oh, you're welcome. Bounce back up to the top for 2 more. Mask. Or wait, did I ask Mask?
Present. No, but thanks. It's just great to hear you guys like taking feedback and answering questions. So.
No problem, man. All right. Below Mask, medicated.
Hey there. Yeah, I was actually thinking about what's kind of inspiring you on what we're working on for defense perks specifically, because I think as an Iron Man main, defenses is something that could be improved. I think some things that are really cool are like how there's perks that augment, corroborate existing skills, like making the arc field have a status effect or something. So I was just wondering what was the influence that going forward.
Actually, one of the perks that influenced me to make better defensive, better defensive things is like, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. I want more of that, please. That type of thing ultimately is kind of expensive because it takes a lot of VFX. I need pet work. There's like damage nonsense that has to get put in there. But there are things that we can piggyback off of. The pet was already set up. The energy barrier, parry attacks, certain heroic buffs, or certain skills that proc a buff are things that are basically triggers or establishments on a hero that I can utilize in perks. Certain things happen, another thing can happen. Certain things happen, maybe I can improve it a little. Those are elements I can leverage relatively quickly. It's just a matter of like kind of like taking apart characters. And then of course, I wanted more defensive perks. I don't just want offensive perks. So using some of these as like kind of stationary ones, basically using those points as like flag posts. I'm like, hey, this is a thing that players do. Can I utilize this for a defensive action? If yes, neat. Expand upon it, see if it's kind of fun, whatever. No, can I like get engineering support? Can I make it? If no, move on. And I got to do that fast. So it actually started with that perk and is just expanding upon it, basically looking through all the skills of like, this seems interesting.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds cool. Like something like maybe like I could envision what you thought of. What you mentioned made me think of like say you do a parry and the parry inflicts like a full set of a full separate like status damage. Then you could make a build that has maybe even more kinds of status damage too. You know, maybe even make more of that hero fantasy. Like Black Widow can electrocute someone when she does a parry. You know, that feels very in character for her, etc.
Yeah. So I'm right there with you, and I hope that like some of that can actually land on them. But we got a lot of people. Let's move on to the next one. But I appreciate the thought on that. Back up to the top. We did medicated. No. No. Let's go back down to the bottom. Sadat.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey. Got any questions?
The only question I usually have is about the gear. I've been getting into looters more and more in the last year, and I particularly loved the system that they had in Outriders and as well as Ghost of Tsushima. They had kind of similar but different approaches. Ghost of Tsushima just had a full reroll system where you had a bunch of different perks that you can roll again, whereas Outriders had more of a modification system where you can just mod one of the perks, and I feel like that's just been something I've been wanting to have in Marvel's Avengers because I'm not the type of person that wants to save scum over and over again.
Yeah, there's there's a lot to kind of unpack with the intent of like what you're trying to get at, which is ultimately, and again, I don't want to speak for you, but what it sounds like is, man, I'd love to have a little bit more player agency over the customization of my character. I'd really like customization on these type of effects. I would like some of these slots to do more than just these things that I keep seeing on it.
Essentially, yeah. Like the way it's currently set up is like I know there's more that needs to be done as well. You know, you might I'm sure you guys are exploring different perks you can add into the game so that everyone isn't just trying to get a damage buff or a driver's barrier. That's always a part of the genre, but in general, the way it's set up now, it just gets kind of tiring when you get a gear piece and you really like uh, some of the stats or some of the perks, but you don't have that right combination, and there's literally nothing you can do except delete it and try again. That's the one
Yeah.
part that gets me.
Reward cadence and reward frequency, like I brought up before, is again something I help manage, is something we're working on, and we're making steps to kind of go along that line. But I mean, your sentiment is not lost, is what I'm saying. There's just a ton of other factors that come into place for any one of those decisions. But yeah.
Yeah, that's something I can chime in on too, right? Like, and just generally speaking, hi, I'm a fan. Hi, I'm a player. I have this idea. I have this concept. 9 times out of 10, you're probably right. Your feedback is probably correct. Then we have to look at, okay, out of X millions of players, we have percentage of feedback for this thing. How do we factor that into current development, future development, what we're doing now, what we're working on, what we're trying to rework, because when we thought we released something with our testing, looked great, then it went out into the wild and billions of people played. Oh, it didn't work so well. All right, cool. How do we refactor that, right? So when you add in all of those factors into a development studio, we have to then make those hard decisions as me, particularly as a producer. what do we focus on? Why, when, how, where? So on the surface, from a fan's point of view, a player's point of view, things look one way. From a developer's point of view, they look a different way. It's not that we don't listen. It's not that we don't care. Those things are just not valid for us. But what we have to look at is, how do we approach enhancing gameplay for players, enhancing gear and perks as this conversation is going, without damaging what we've already built, without unbalancing what we've already balanced? And is it worth the trade-off between how many people we have to work on X amount of things for things we're doing versus reworking or fixing things that we need to fix? Trust me when I tell you, we definitely want to fix problems that aren't good for the community. We also do not like them. It doesn't always work out that way, but that doesn't mean we will not get to it. It just means at the moment, maybe some things might not get done. But even with that being said, we are always working to fix based on community feedback. And I think Alex's blog post coming out soon can expand on that. And most of the things he talked about tonight that we're publicly allowed to talk about, also in the works.
Okay. One more thought, because I want to try and get everybody at least one chance to get some word in here. But any closing statement on that?
Yeah, I just want to say I definitely appreciate that and understand there is a balancing act, and I think it would definitely help players in general, because a lot that have a lot of this feedback, if they had like kind of a more clear vision of exactly what the devs think or what the devs are planning to do in terms of their vision for just the loot system in particular, I think that would clear a lot of things up for people that are having all these suggestions and wondering, what's going on.
Yeah, I'm working on that blog post.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right, right above Sadat, Phantom. He unmuted himself. That's step one. Anything? Phantom, I'll come back to you. Make sure you got your thing working. Nick. Oh, nope. Phantom's back. Maybe. All right.
His mic's not working.
I can barely hear Phantom. I feel like it's that girl from Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, just type in your question, Phantom. I'll come back around to it. Nick, got any questions? Guess not. Off to Cheney. Questions?
Yes, hello. Good evening. Test.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to try not to take up too much of everyone's time. I just want to start off with I'm incredibly impressed by this sort of transparency with the team. I really appreciate it. The game's pretty good as far as it can go. I'm really happy with it. From what I've heard with the whole expanding on the different types of roles for characters, other than just big number glass cannon, I really liked hearing that. I just wanted to say that. It sounded really good. Couple things I wanted to speak about real quick. Is this might not be your department because you do combat and gear, but is there any sort of any plan for any of the, like, say, trophy / achievement problems going on with certain random players?
Man, I hope so.
Okay,
I still have one achievement that keeps resetting every time we put out a patch. It pisses me off. I can't 100% my game because I keep losing progress on it. So, not my department. I hope we fix it.
Okay, appreciate it. And I know this was I had a just acknowledgement for this earlier. I was just wondering if there's any other like plans, or if you guys have looked into the Hulk rework with the overcharge that has been going around.
Pet, not me.
Gotcha.
So,
no problem.
If anything, you could ping Dan. He might be able to give you any sort of insight on that, but I can't.
Yeah, sure. Is there a specific question there that I could answer now?
Overcharge.
I'm sorry, say it again. It was
the overcharge mechanic on Hulk.
Right. I think well, there's a couple things with Hulk, right? Like Hulkbuster, why there's so many bugs. and overcharge and etc. Right? Our designer that works on that, Scott Walters, is actively and always looking at ways to improve that. You're not wrong, and all I can say at this moment is yes, it is something we are looking into as far as priority goes. That's a tough one, right? Like, when will those changes take effect? I don't know. But we are actively looking into making adjustments, not only with that, but other things as well. But yes, thank you for the feedback, and it is on our list.
No problem. One last thing. I'm not sure how to properly word this, but in regards to exotics, with how you guys wanted to sort of expand upon, um, rewarding and all of that, is there maybe have like a parallel between maybe the way like uniques worked in Marvel Heroes, if you remember that, sort of having like unique stuff towards each exotic, um, that are more like relevant towards each character instead of say like proficiency and precision on like characters like Hulk, for example.
So
Just
hero specific, we talked about hero specific attributes and how
yes.
they would affect. It's new. So anything that isn't in the game already right now, assume it's new. And new doesn't mean bad. It doesn't. New means time. That's all it is. If something is new, it takes time to implement. The UI, like the big, huge UI rework for Wakanda,
Mhm.
like I know Wetstein was working on that one for what felt like damn near a decade. That's what he was working on. Everything was new. We were transitioning UI states. There was a new way to encapsulate data on like what things actually read what data from the meta objects of the gear. All of it was new. It took a ton of time to do. So yes, it is a thing we can do. We have to compare that against what we get out of it. And what I explained before, where preferred attributes are a balancing element to the content within. Not just like, oh, I don't like it that this gear has resilience and doesn't have proficiency on it. There's potentially a reason why it doesn't have proficiency on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a bunch of elements in there to like kind of get onto it, on top of the other fact of I am looking at every potential way to make gear more interesting from the top down. Like, can I do more with attributes? Can I have negative attributes? I'm asking all of those questions. New takes time, and then when I get to testing, some of those things are bad, and I don't do them. So that doesn't really answer your question, other than the fact of, yeah, I'm trying anything I can.
I understand. And I really do appreciate the responses, and just everything looks really promising.
Awesome.
Really, like I said, just want to say thanks from what I've heard so far. And just to reiterate, to recap, honestly, my only concerns would be, like I said earlier, would be how sort of samey a lot of the overcharge mechanics are.
Yeah.
Again, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's not my thing, and man, yeah. But anyway, yeah. But thanks, man. Let's move on because we got a couple of new people in here, but we still need to get the middle ground before we get to those. So Nick, you're up. Or not. That's fine. Nick, you here? Moneybags, are you here?
Maybe Thor is ready if Moneybags isn't. Oh, if Moneybags is, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just listening. I'm sorry.
No problem, man. Thor, you got a question this time? Otherwise, we're gonna grab all the people that showed up late.
Yeah, so I think we're good. So just a little background. I'm Thor. I'm the head of High Sodium in Avengers on Reddit. Please don't ban me, Sonic. So I had a couple questions, but a lot of them I have to filter through, so I'm not going to ask them right now. We'll get back to it some other time. I do have a question. I don't know if you've been asked this yet because I was building some Warhammer, but for gear, are there any plans for doing maybe tier sets or some sort of sets to have set bonuses when you get certain pieces of gear together?
Kind of going back to what was asked before. If it's not in the game, assume that it's new. And then on the flip side of that, what do we get out of doing set bonuses? Well, okay. At the core level, a set bonus is please equip all of these things to get an additional thing. Kind of a perk. Okay. Can't we just have perks that interact with each other so we can kind of simulate set bonuses? Yeah, that's an idea too. Set bonuses are a different driving mechanic that we can facilitate currently through other means. If I just did a set bonus, we would have to do UI because there would have to be some way of like checking like if you have this, if you have this. We actually looked into set bonus early on to see if it was more viable than like doing some of these complicated perks that I've gotten into the claw thing. And actually it turned out set bonuses were way more complicated because it touched UI all over the place.
Interesting.
Technically, it has to be a different rarity, which, holy crap, I don't want to do another rarity for stat. That is a pain and a half of work. I will, should we get something more interesting. But fundamentally, so much had to be done as an exception to get set gear working at the time because we were trying to work it in with a system of what we had. Now, going forward, since I've bought us time doing some of this cool stuff with claw gear, we can revisit of what if we don't make it an exception? What if we make it a systemic solution? How would that look? But it's new. It takes time.
Cool. Thank you.
Hey, I just want to jump in real quick. I got to bounce, folks. I'm on the East Coast. It's 1:20 for me. I got early morning meetings, but very much appreciate the chat that Alex started. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. And again, if you have any questions for me, feel free to DM me. But I got a call tonight, so Alex, good luck. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. Later, Dan. Yeah. So let's go through. We got a couple other people in here that we'll try and get in so people can see some words, and then we'll call for tonight.
Just to say, Moneybags did say he had a question. He got cut off.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Moneybags.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So my question was more so in regards to progression. So one of the things that I noticed about this game that was somewhat different from other looters is that gaining access to the end-game content, and this is just my personal opinion, others may disagree, I found it to be a little bit too easy, quite frankly. And I'm speaking right now in regards to the Omega level threat. The only requirement to enter the Omega level threat was to be at the very minimum power level 145. And I wanted to know, did you guys have any plans for making it more challenging to access endgame content, such as the raid and, you know, elite versions of missions, assuming that you guys are working on that? Because I find that, and this is again personal opinion, but oftentimes when games make it too easy for people to access the end-game content, you get the issue of a lot of people who aren't ready to be in that content kind of bogs down the matchmaking, and it makes it harder to progress because you keep getting matched up with people who shouldn't be there. And I'm speaking from personal experience right now, but many times when I try to solo queue the Omega level threat, I'll get matched up with people who are power level 145 or 150, but their builds are not even remotely ready for this level of content. So I just wanted to know, were you guys looking at that in any way?
Well, I mean, to answer you flat, yes. Again, cannot go into details and all that kind of stuff. Progression is a big thing. It's, again, something I help manage. And access, player exclusivity, player accessibility is one of those things I brought up yesterday in chat, which was how do we weigh one of these against each other? Because yeah, I could set up a huge gate around something that only the top 2% can actually get into. But man, we spent a lot of time, a lot of money on something a very small portion of our players are going to get into just so they have a better experience with themselves. Well, I mean, there are games out there that do that, sure. It's just, can we do that? Can we afford to do that? What would matchmaking look like if there was some type of gate mechanic? Also, by the way, yes, power level is like kind of an easy thing. Play the game, exist, breathe. You will get power level. You will eventually get there. Fine. Last Avenger Standing has this huge gate mechanic. You have to go through this entire mission chain just to have access to it and eventually play it. That's not necessarily just as fun. And that doesn't necessarily test you either. You just have to go through that stuff. How can we accurately determine a player is skilled enough to go into a thing if we do not have some form of metrics to find out if a player is good? Like, how do we judge a good player? It's like they've gone through it X fast, or they've gone through it and they've defeated X number of enemies within a mission. It is a difficult way to categorize it, and it's something we are trying to solve in the future with like the claw raid and everything, where we're at least trying to put in some harder barriers that are still accessible and still have a known quantity of it, which is kind of the difficult part. Ultimately, like, power level is going to be one of the easiest things that we can gauge people. Get to this power level by doing X number of activities, and that at least shows that you've put in X amount of time, and theoretically you have more than 2 brain cells, and you didn't just walk through the rest of the game to get to that power level. So yes, we have thought about it. It's not an easy answer.
Yeah, definitely not. Thank you though. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I think we covered medicated. Did we call you out?
Yes, you did. Thank you, though.
No, cool, no problem. All right, so I think we called out everybody in the middle except the people that came in new. So I'm going down the list. Ethan, we're just gonna go top to bottom. Ethan, you're new. Did you get a question in?
Oh, no, sorry, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to listen. Thanks for communicating with us, though. It's really cool to hear.
You are absolutely welcome and awesome. Next on it, Javik. You doesn't look like I called out that name. Neat. Just listening. Is the namesake true, or you got a question?
I don't have a question.
I have a question, but it's one you probably won't answer. What are your thoughts on extremists? Anyway, thank you. I'll go ahead and listen.
Yeah, it's just listening. Below that, just listening. Kelsey, how about you? Got a question? And I got a timer. All right, moving on. Groups of letters and numbers. Got a question? It's the person who's above Lejeune, by the way, the KZY.
Listening, but appreciate you being here.
Ah, no problem. Awesome. Poodle. Giving people a little bit of time. Self-made. Did you have a point to? Were able to get in a question?
Thank you. I don't have any questions.
Rock on. Truly. Or that Boulevard. I'll give you a chance. Got a question though?
Wait, which one? Oh,
well, we'll go with I'm sorry. I skipped it. That Boulevard first, and then we'll go to you, Truly.
My question is probably something you don't have the clearance on answering, so I'll just let it go. I'm beyond that. I'm just listening. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Truly, you're up.
Okay, my question is mainly on character nerfs. I guess if that's what you want to touch on. Like, I know a lot of people feel like balancing is a kind of a weird issue on this game, especially like characters with Hulk, Thor, and I'm gonna be honest, the weakest character is probably Captain America. You don't do that much damage. But what's your what do you think about character nerfs? Is it like something we need in this game, or does the balancing need to be worked on? I don't know.
Characters is a matter of pet. That was unfortunately Dan. You'll have to wait till he comes back online. I deal with gear. I don't deal with characters. I can deal with how characters interact or balance off of gear, but characters themselves, like character skills, how the skills interact and all that ain't my thing.
Oh, okay. Thanks, though.
No problem.
I just want to say something real quick. That last comment about Cap being the weakest hurt me deeply. Thank you.
Yeah, and also I just want to also point out, because we have access to metrics, Cap is not even close to the weakest or the worst in any metric.
Wait, who's the weakest?
Again, I'm not going to say that. I'm just giving you the metrics. Not even close.
Got to keep those secrets.
There are some metrics that like it does no good to put it out there, all that kind of stuff. But there are numbers, like we get numbers and it helps us balance, and we try to figure out why those numbers exist. Cap is never an outlier.
Mm. Okay.
Anyway,
Thank you so much. Cat,
you're
please
welcome.
don't hit me.
You're welcome. I think we got everybody. I'm going to answer one question that showed up in the chat because I finally got over there and I started reading it about damage buffs. Did we address it? Yeah, technically, we did address it, and we addressed it by. And I'm going to reiterate it now that everybody's here because the big way of answering this, it was just Dan, it was just RT, it was just a couple of other people. That to put it in the perspective, we have plans. These are not plans that we have pulled the trigger on because all of the plans revolve around what we decide to do with damage buff and any perk that may fit into its category. Perks that become such a dominating decision that a piece of gear without it is trash, regardless of what the other perks are. We have to make a decision on that first. We are at the traffic light of damage buff. Depending on what path we choose to fix, to address damage buff, will be how we address many things of gear after the fact. Something will happen with damage buff, and again, one of the answers of what we do with damage buff could be nothing, and we accelerate everything to match it. But that is just one decision. We haven't pulled the trigger yet. We are waiting to see the results of the claw gear. We are waiting to see the results of the community feedback, of like the community sentiment and the metrics of did any of my initiatives bear fruit? That type of thing. Anyway, so to answer that, and then I just realized that there's a person who's just an underscore that I didn't call upon. Did you have a question?
No question for me, just listening.
Awesome. All right, so going through chat a little bit, and then I'm going to call it here in a bit. I do have to, do adult things, and I have to get ready for bed. Do you plan on adding more hero-specific perks? Yeah, a ton. Gonna have to think of a better one. Lejeune had a question. Lejeune, go ahead. Ask your question.
Okay, I had a question when it comes to targeted loot. I just want to get it out there. Like, say for instance, you're trying to farm a certain piece or a certain perk, or a piece itself, for instance, damage buff perk, or I'm trying to think. Say for instance, the Wakanda, how you know exactly where to go to get the Flauntless buff and get the Wakanda gear. You know exactly where to go to get that. I was wondering if it's going to be any implications, just for other gear where you can know exactly where to farm at instead of just relying on RNG for when it comes to certain things or certain gear.
Wakanda and the Wakanda gear vendor, fundamentally a gamble. It was my template. It was my experiment to showcase that targeted gear, that exclusive gear, that narrower gear perk pools, that certain attributes and all of that make for interesting gameplay. When all the gear is not equal, there is an actual reason to go to places to purchase things at a gear vendor, to actually go to a certain place to open up chests. Hey, the chests in Wakanda can give Sonic gear. The chests everywhere else don't. Yeah. This was the template that we are trying to go forward with, because ultimately the game is a lot more interesting when things aren't homogenous.
Yep.
So I don't know if that really answers your point or whatever. Of hey, is there plans going forward? Yes, because I was given enough rope to do something, and I decided to just extend that as far as I could and do a lot of things that people finally stopped saying no to.
Cool.
Hey, do you mind if I jump in with another question? I actually had something I kind of forgot to cover in my thesis I wrote you.
Sure, and then there a couple of other people got questions on it. I think we're going to limit it to 3 after that.
Okay. So when you're designing loot and you're looking at perks and stuff, how much are you working with the other teams in terms of say the villain design, where they're looking at, hey, this guy's going to have X amount of health. We expect this amount of damage from the players, this much consistent damage. And like, are you looking at like, encounter lengths based on player expected damage output? And how does that play into when you're designing perks? Does that make sense? Do you kind of get where I'm going with that?
Yes. So this
Because-
is let me start off with saying, me personally, rewards, reward activity, activity content, and activity difficulty are not 4 different things. They are tied together. An activity, a boss, the combat mechanics, the reward type, these at least need to be planned with the others somewhat in mind. I have been working with, this is not necessarily true in the past, because again, the Clogger set is the first set I have planned from start to finish. So I have no idea about the other sets, even the ones that I've modified. I have no idea when the Omega set was actually planned, if it was how it was planned with the Super Adaptoid Fight. I only updated it after the fact. What I can tell you is that the Claw Raid, and to another extent the Elite Claw Raid, was planned in conjunction with what I was doing with the Claw Gear part and what I was doing with the potential difficulty. Some of that got farther along than the others, so there will not be a perfect balance. There rarely is. But a lot of effort was made to make sure that these things were not made independent of each other, because that didn't really work out before. And they shouldn't. It shouldn't be done independent of each other.
Because I noticed when the game first launched, obviously one of the biggest things, especially like when you saw YouTube videos and stuff like that, it's like, oh look, I'm one-shotting Abomination, I'm one-shotting Taskmaster, and it's like that didn't really seem to fit with my experiences, from other live services and stuff, and it just kind of almost felt disappointing, and it almost felt like it did get developed in different rooms essentially, where not everybody was communicating on the same page. And so I guess that's good to hear that you are working with them and making sure, like, hey, if I'm making a perk and the expected damage output is this, that it's not going to ruin this encounter.
I mean, like, this is all a matter of playtesting, which is actually what we're actively doing. It's because we go through playtesting, and there'll be some days that one of the other designers, Brian, last week he just got a burr up his ass because
Not
he
me,
went
sorry.
through. No, not you. The other designer, Brian. He was on one of the podcasts. He got furious because he went back and he went through a bunch of the playtesting videos that we had internally, not from QA, and he was taking a look at the loadouts, and he's like, "You guys are saying this is so hard when you guys have shit loadouts. Nobody would ever use these. What are you doing?" And so he went through and he got me to make a set of like debug gear that we're going to hand to playtesters, and we're going to hand to non-QA playtesters, and he basically laid it out in dumb terms of like, you are going to play Iron Man, this is going to be your setup. You are going to play Captain America, this is going to be your setup. Because we kept having the problems that we would be getting feedback, and me and Brian would be like, what are you talking about? Too hard? What are you doing? And then we'd look at it and be like, your resilience is 500. What are you equipping? Just a bunch of blues. And we're like, what's going on? So it is stuff. I don't know if that actually answers your question.
That does, because it kind of goes along with what I was saying. Like, it almost seemed like it caught some people at the studio by surprise when they heard, oh, people are one-shotting Abomination. They're like, wait, what? And it's because obviously players are going to do what they always do, which is gravitate towards the best perks, the meta, the best builds. And if the devs aren't aware of like, hey, this is what players are doing, then obviously it makes it harder. But if you and Azeros are going through and making sure that your quality testers are using expected builds from players, then that's good. That's good.
That was the big thing. It's like we basically put together like a doc where like, please use perks that are like powerful. And one of the questions we got back, I can't remember who it was from. It's not anybody in the game design. I think it was like somebody in our brand department, which they're like, well, what's a powerful perk? And we're just like, okay, we need to be way more detailed about this for our playtesting groups because we cannot leave any of this up to chance like we did before. Like all the attack pattern of Super Adaptoid got overtuned because in the very beginning QA was like, man, this guy is easy. And then we went back to QA and we were like, hey, what did you guys do to like really go through and beat up QA? They had impossible builds. They had builds that players could
Willpower
not
burst on crit.
they could not get at all. I'm not talking about like high stats. I'm talking about perk combinations that are impossible to have.
Man.
And I'm like, of course, no duh. They were proccing everything on like one shot. They're like one crit, boom, everything's on. And I'm like, okay, of course, no wonder they're deleting these guys. It was on both sides. We had to basically set a standard, and Brian set up that standard, and he like came over to me and he's like, how possible is this? And I looked at him, I'm like, well, some of it's possible. He's like, hey, can you get me that that epic named piece from Black Panther that allows him to do automatic battery damage and put it in the debug set? I'm like, sure. And he's like, but can you make the second perk Vibranium? I'm like, no, because that's not how the piece drops in the real world. And he's like, oh, okay. And so there was like a lot of back and forth on that. But anyway, I'm moving on from that because we got a couple of things.
That answered it really well. No,
cool.
Thank you.
So I'm scrolling up here. High Ruler, you had a question. Did you just want to say it out loud, or do you want me to read this thing?
Either works. Whatever you want. Doesn't matter.
Go ahead. It gives me a chance to get a little drink of water. You ask the question.
Sounds good. So my question was, I think a lot of what we asked was about what we would like to see from Gear. But since you play the game too and are actively looking at this from a developer and a player perspective, what's something that may be a pie in the sky for you, but something you love to do both in the short term and the long term? Anything that hasn't been touched on that you would love to talk to us about that our questions haven't covered yet?
So I asked for one question, and you gave me four.
Well, you put it all in one paragraph, right?
It doesn't. Technically, I just only put one punctuation word. That's called bad grammar. That's not called one question.
I know. You can pick one, if
all
there's
right,
one that
so
you really want to answer.
I mean, what are my plans short term to make Claw Gear actually desirable to players? What do I desire long term? To use all of the evidence of Claw Gear being good and actually driving player engagement as a giant middle finger, allowing me to say, no, I was right. Please allow me to do more of this. Not literally a middle finger. And I would probably be a little bit more tactful because my producer and my lead would tell me, don't say that to leads because you'll just get fired. And then we'll have more work to do on our own end, diplomatic about it. And I would, but I would use it as evidence to do that work everywhere. I don't want this to be exclusionary. I want all activities to have a purpose. And I want all activities to have a reason why you go there. And I don't want RNG to be the biggest thing that like drives you and all that. There's this big whole thing of like, oh, allow me to keep regrinding for the loot. It's like, there's a lot of implications on that, especially when we talk about like resource gain and what's coming up in future patches. That grinding loot is gonna lead to some really funky junk. And so we might have to actually pull some of that out, and we might have to put it into more gear vendors where you actually find some of this interesting stuff, and we just give you a ton of resources and you buy. There's a lot of different things we could go about it, but ultimately that's it. Like I want less universal homogenous stuff. I want more hero specific stuff, but those take time. And man, I was a grasshopper when I got into that system, and they're like, hey, propose Claw Gear, and I shot for the moon. I had like 6 different perk themes, and 2 of them ended up just exploding in my face. One of them was way too expensive to do in the time frame that we had, and so I landed on 2.5 because one of them kind of got hybridized and all that kind of stuff. And more of this will be expanded in a blog post. That's my short term, and my long term is leveraging that to do more. And anything that I haven't touched or anything that hasn't been touched on, we touched on a lot of stuff. And again, that's why I'm making the blog post, so stuff I forget will get said somewhere. Hopefully that answers most of your incorrect paragraph.
Unbelievable. It answered none of it. Thank you, though.
Awesome.
He's a giga Chad. It's okay.
So 7-Bit Brian, clarification. Here, go ahead, say your thing. And then we'll have one more after that.
Sure. Yeah, you can take your drink of water, man. So mine was a clarification because when we discussed earlier, you like encouraging builds and especially tanking and defense. You made it clear that that's something that you're currently working on and wanting to bring into the game. And then when they were asking about like tier sets and bonuses from that, you brought up like finding a solution to that without doing all of that work. And you came up something that you mentioned during that was having perks play off of other perks. Rather than just perks playing off of abilities, and that's very fascinating because you have compounding perks that interact with one another. So that sounds great to me. I wondered. My question was: is that something that, like you mentioned, that you guys have to finish what you're doing and you're working towards in the future, or is that also something you're working on right now with the changes that you're making with the perks that you're working on?
Yes.
Yes to both. Okay, awesome. I love
Or
it.
yes to neither. That it's yeah, you're leading a lot and you're like trying to like probe, and that's fine, and I got that. And I can't really say anything. Again, there's a blog post coming out. And it should answer some of that. But yes, easiest way for me to get set bonuses is to basically fake set bonuses. Because I can do that now. And I don't have to touch UI, which that team is a little bit, they're doing a lot. They have a lot going on. So every time I can not involve them in stuff, I get like weeks of work done. So I'll fake whatever I can. And just listening, playing on reworking damage buff, again, there are plans. We have to not necessarily rework it because, again, one of the plans can be we leave it alone, but everything else has to get brought up. That's not really a question. So we'll go on to we'll go on from there. I'm not seeing. Okay, so thanks, Captain America. That's not a question. You should. There are plans. It's not. And again, that's almost a corporate way of saying we're listening and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to sound like that, but I make for any problem there are multiple solutions, and I have to plan for what solution we're eventually going to drive upon. There is a problem here. Okay, what are ways to fix it? Well, we can fix it from the enemy side, we can fix it from the Warzone side, we can fix it from the gear side, and we have to find out which is more approachable, potentially what is the correct answer, because one may be a systemic. If we do something with enemies, it affects all enemies. So that's a systemic problem. If we affect the hero, it could affect gear. But if we affect the gear, it could inversely affect all heroes. So it's a matter of I make plans, we get data, and we execute on one of them. Hopefully that kind of throws that out there on that one. Changing the first completion rewards of the OLT after, yes. Yeah, there were plans. All right, I got one more question. Is there anybody in chat who hasn't like written anything? Let's try to focus on somebody that hasn't gotten a word in, who's just kind of listening on that. If not, anybody got a question?
Yeah, actually, I have one now.
Go ahead.
So if I understood you correctly, you said if the new raid gear gets a lot of positive feedback, that you'd have more I don't know if it's the right word, drive to work on everything else that's not the raid and improve it.
So, let me read. At a basis, yes. And it's not just necessarily positive feedback, but we also have positive metric, because everybody could say that this game is great and everything is fixed now, but if we only have 5 people playing, that doesn't pay the bills. So it's not just about player sentiment. That is a powerful thing. Don't get me wrong. That is taken into account, but it's also about player engagement. Let's say that the month-to-month retention of players trying and accomplishing the Claw raid are up 50% over the family reunion raid, and the player sentiment about gear is good. That is evidence, that is fuel for initiatives that I may not have had engineering or additional manpower to complete in my time frame. And then, of course, those initiatives are not just at the top, they're everywhere. So I don't know if that was leading to your question or if you had a question beyond that, but
No, that sounds good to me. Thanks.
no problem. All right, Shrek. Seriously, no more after this, okay? But I know you've been here for a while. You haven't really gotten anything in. Go ahead, ask your question. Or fine, I'll ask you a question. It's the question of heroics. You find sometimes bosses use heroics to avoid big attacks. Parries and blocks don't do the trick. And then, well, we're going into like enemy and hero mechanics. Not my department. While I can do some stuff with gear, I can't potentially do animation changes, and I certainly can't do other stuff. But if you're talking about like, is that what you're getting at, Shrek, or are you talking about something else? I don't know. I don't know what Shrek's going on about that. Anyway, it looks like I'll have to answer the other ones later in chat. But again, everybody here, this started out as a small thing. I'm glad everybody came in. Glad everybody was able to get words in, even if it was just listening. And again, I don't know if the gear will be good. I find it fun, but I'm a different player. We're all different players. And my hope is I gave everybody at least something that they can kind of utilize for the rest of it. I want it to be fun. And on that note, everybody have a good, what is today? Wednesday? Everybody have a good week.